So I'm going to talk about the topic of data and AI today. So it's perfect segment from what Bill has been talking about, some of the use cases in different life science and a lot of AI areas. Let me ask you a few things. Who over here actually have built any of the AI models yourself or with your team? Can you raise hands? Okay, great. How many of you do you think you're actually using AI every day? You use your phone, like face recognition, open your phone? Do you use GPS? So you should all raise your hand here, right? So you are touched by AI every day with all the data. So you probably don't even know that, right? Just brief background, I work in MinerX. In fact, probably just exactly 2 years ago, I'm in the exact same boat as you. Start thinking about how do I get involved with Filecoins? What is Web3 and what are the opportunity? Well, there are more questions about what kind of hardware do I buy and how many storage I want, how do I make deals, right? There's a lot of questions there. I hope like these 2 days or 3 days that you would learn a lot and this rich community behind you and beside you supporting all this journey. I'm going to talk about a little bit what I'm thinking through just in addition to what some of the building and Filecoins, but think about like where this data and could leave you. I like this chart because I think John used this exact same one. Probably Stefan also referenced very similar data there, right? So we all think data is growing a lot, right? What you can find is that it's actually interesting the last 3 years, we actually created more data than the entire human history in the last 5,000 years. And this pattern probably will repeat maybe next year, maybe just 2 years, right? You create more data on all of that, right? Where do we store this data? You might think public cloud, private cloud. It's also interesting to see that if you add 3 Azures, like all this major public cloud, they're 1 ZB last year. And where's IDC and Gartner's expecting that we're going to store 100 ZBs? Maybe Filecoins. You need to grow a lot to get even a fraction of that. So think about the space or the needs that you're going to have. I actually came from enterprise sector, working a lot with the corporates and running a lot of private data and things. And one of the questions that we were just talking about literally is like on different industries. I work on online marketing, work on a lot of digital space there. We spend a lot of time building engineering teams, hiring resources. In fact, in order for you to really process some of the big data in the enterprise level, normally you would need to have like dozens of engineers just focus on this area, or maybe even 50 or 100 engineers to build the data pipeline, get the infrastructure, get the manageability, get a scale, get all of this. Like enterprise spend a lot of time and money trying to figure all this out and repeatedly every day. If you go out there, maybe 90% of people are still struggling or facing this challenge today, right? This challenge have actually cost a lot of time and resources in the enterprise level. Many companies trying to attack those, but still facing a lot of market challenges. Like it's complicated to use, right? You cannot find talents to manage this well. And business are so busy trying to just get through this storage infrastructure piece, and everyone needs help. So if you go out there and talk to any of the private sector and ask, do you have a data or big data issues and struggles? I would bet that a lot of people are going to tell you yes, right? Like 80% of big data projects failed. Like it just like taking longer time, having a lot of like overly costs. And what are the latest finding? This is just about my personal experience and seeing what's happening out there. There's so many different kind of data, and the industry has been moving into some basics. What are the basics there? We are actually, as a human and educated kind of professionals, our mind works very structural, right? You see an Excel table, it's a lot easier for you to figure things out, right? If you see a JSON blob or a text, right, like or 3 days like chat, you don't know how to process this data except like you scanning through and trying to take notes. And like if you had tons of this like unstructured data, no human, I should say, be able to process them effectively, right? And also the business are realizing that we want zero manageability there, meaning we would like someone else to please take care of all this like infrastructure, scaling, and management, right? Like somebody please take care of all of those so that the business can really focusing on finding the value of the data rather than just spending a lot of time to try to manage those data, right? So some of these areas that business are exploring through like the AI or the tools are one of the means that to really get value out of it. You will see enterprise or company have analytic team. I bet most of them today gonna spending time or are spending time on a lot of statistical calculation among all the big data or predicted data analysis, right? Because you just can't consume at a granular level of this data given the rate of its growth, right? You wanted to see what are the chances, like what are the next steps this data may actually tell you. Why AI, right? Like a lot of companies are actually stepping into AI. Of course, AI can be used for many other things, but just use AI to help to manage and get insight from data is one of the major topics for enterprises, right? It's like if you go and talk to each of the private sector areas, that a lot of them may already hear about it or are in practice of trying things out and trying to get useful information there. And large set of data in AI, they really come hand to hand to help each other. I don't see anyone actually building AI models. It's fantastic. I can speak about AI anyway because you will all just like agreeing with me, right? The way how I see is that AI actually is trying to mimic humans, right? At least that's the kind of tooling test, like trying to see whether how much AI can really perform like us, like human, right? So there are different areas of the AI that different industry or sector are working on, like from the knowledge about like the brain, like how does it function and can AI help think about certain things, right? Computer vision, you hear about all the autonomous driving, right? All of that, and smell is one of the areas that I don't see a lot yet, but I'll walk through that a couple of steps there. Some of the top AI model, how much data that they actually need? The answer is not enough data, right? Even you see like the data growing so much, but you talk to the AI scientists, they will say it's not enough data. I need more, right? There must be gaps there somewhere, right? If you look at what Facebook was doing in the Meta and the VR world, right? One of the models they're building is about using computer vision, right? It's trying to actually understand how from the images to learn and build better virtual world there, right? And also trying to understand what's happening in that virtual world. So they have to spend a lot of time in data infrastructure and investment building a lot of that. The natural languages is another major undertaking actually happening today, in addition to computer vision, right? The OpenAI is one of the non-profit, but later turned on more kind of like private solution. They have been really trying to understand how humans communicate, right? I think this area could be one of the very next large area that you are going to work on, and some of this may get connected. For example, like in the VR world, maybe you can freely talk about one languages, and then you don't even need to learn another languages. That the AI would just, or in the virtual world, would just automatically communicate with you with another languages, right? So there's a lot of like possibilities start to open when you connect many of this together. And if you go to this AI dungeon website, how you would play, it's actually a game. I find it fascinating is that what this game is about is that you go in and you think about a story, whatever story that you come up with. The AI would continue to help you to develop that story and make that to be a game for you. So you basically can just go and create a game of whatever your imaginations are, right? It's not like someone published game, you go and play there, that you'll be able to do that. And it needs a lot of this natural languages understanding and processing to have that level of powers. Robotic, I was watching some of the Boston Dynamic. Have anyone watched some of these robotic videos? Great. Sometimes exciting, sometimes it's scary, you know, like you look at those and like, wow. Like this picture is actually, they were just released maybe a month or two ago, having two robots doing a synchronized backflip together, right? Like in a kind of like environment that it's not like perfectly set up, right? So they need a lot of like this learning and data to get through some part of that. And this is about humans' motions, right? When we talk about like the computer vision and natural languages, and this is the motion, like how our body moves, right? I don't actually see a lot of smell-related kind of like AI space, and maybe this one area have not yet getting developed, but they need a lot of data. It seems like people actually don't have a lot of data in that space, and that's why that the AI doesn't move forward much, because you need to understand how humans smell things, and that they're like finding all this data and trying to get through that. And the most important piece, the brain. Today, a lot of like top AI scientists are thinking about, well, you know, with all this data, we call it like supervised training. It's not the right way to train the brain, right? They wanted to think about, can the brain learn from all this data by itself, like self-learning? So AI is actually having a roadblock today on this area that it needs next breakthrough to get through that. Why I'm talking all of this, and what is that to do with the Filecoin that we're all here today? Well, data, data, and data. They're all connected to the data needs that in order to fill the kind of AI space and on those innovations. And many of the AI models that they need more data, and it's actually proven that 90% of them, like one of the statistics, if you give more data to the AI model, they can advance further, right? And that's why that this data is super important for us to do that. I do wanted to share, since you are interested in the space, and I think that you will be a strong part of the community. So some of the areas that would like to post that to you, and maybe you can help to shape the community and shape the industry as well. Data privacy. has been increasingly become sensitive to many of the private corporates, right? So how do we protect the data? How do we make sure that it's encrypted? And how do we find the right access? It's very important as a data storage provider that you wanted to be aware. You want to speak to that in that space. Data bias is another area that becomes very interesting. That in generic term, it's basically just about whether you find completed set of data before you use them, right? If you only get a small set of data or fragment set of data, when you're selecting that to build some analysis or train an AI model, that result is gonna be like incomplete, right? Or biased sometimes, right? It's like you focus on certain things, but maybe missing some other scenarios. The ethical use of the data is also very important, right? Like I think that this is in a growing area. How do we manage data? How do we respect the privacy? How do we get accountability of the data ownerships and many of that? And I encourage you to help out in the space as you participate, right? Seeing and understanding what the challenges are today in this area. So Web3, I'm super excited about the future about Web3, right? You really think about the decentralized space of what the Web3 can provide, and also the level of like distributed computing capability and storage that you provide, right? It really helps a lot on the infrastructure problem like we just talking a little bit earlier today. This would adjust to many of the enterprise that they need. And the data trust and verifiable kind of data is very important as well. But at the same time, I do want you to know, like, blockchain has another aspect to it because in some way it's open and in some way it's transparent, right? So you may want to work with your partners or a company like Pingling, right? This is a perfect case here. Like, work with them, right, to see how exactly to go through some of the enterprise practices. Like maybe you would encrypt the data before you load it onto a blockchain, right? So to make sure like there's no accidentally data like leakage or anything, right? So just a lot of good practices can put it in place. And some of this is like consensus algorithm in blockchain, right? They're not really real time. I think Bill was just talking early on, like what are the right scenarios that you want to use Filecoin? Like Filecoin today, I mean, it may still evolve, but today it doesn't address all that they need, right? Like the hot data, like millisecond kind of responses. That's not what Filecoin has today. Maybe in the future, but in the near term, like archival and potentially some of the warm data, maybe that is a better use cases, like as you go out and understand the use cases for different enterprises. Also, the nice thing about the blockchain and Filecoin and all of this is community driven, right? I get benefit a lot from participating in the community, and we actually work together. And in fact, there are multi-chain collaborations that are happening as well, right? Like you want some Ethereum type of data, you want some transactional control, right? Maybe Filecoin does not have it today, but you can connect with other blockchains that there are company and providers out there to help you to bring the solution together to help address some of those needs as well, right? So that's all my talk, and I hope that you can find your next innovation with data.